Time to go back before all the TVs were flat.
I bet she gives a mean back rub, huh? How'd you like me to rub this across your lip?
Back when once you heard the old TV go pop, you just put a new one on top.
Didn't I tell you to stay in the car?
Yeah, but you were gone a long time and the human bladder only holds 14 ounces.
Back when nobody you knew called it a remote control. Nah, it's MOTE Control Month, a 28-day celebration of black television shows. Here's another video that I've already done a top 10 on with quite a bit of details, so once again, I'll link that video on the screen or in the comments somewhere, and we'll try not to be real redundant in this video. In that video, I said that if I had to choose between The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and The Cosby Show, I'm taking The Fresh Prince every time, which I'm sure isn't a popular opinion. For me, it's just something about The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that's more relatable than The Cosby Show, even though I'm sure the Banks family was far more wealthy than the Huxtables. I mean, it's in the name and everything. Maybe it's because The Fresh Prince wasn't handcrafted to perfection in a pretentious manner like The Cosby Show was, and instead left the door wide open for diversity within its characters. Here's a quick recap of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air origins. Music executive Benny Medina had a rough upbringing, and following the death of his mother and abandonment by his father, he moved into the modified garage of a family of a friend he met in school. The family lived in Beverly Hills, and it was a culture shock to Medina since he grew up in East LA. Years later, when Medina was a bigger name in the industry, he pitched the idea of a show loosely based on his own life where a young black teenager moves in with a rich white family. But somewhere along the line, the decision was made to change the family to a black family, to open the door for a more nuanced show about identity and the diversity of black life in America, an idea that was clearly critical to the show's success. Around the same time, Grammy Award-winning rapper Will Smith was going through it financially. His second album had basically flopped, and even worse, he owed the IRS $2.8 million. At the advice of his girlfriend at the time, he went backstage to the Arsenio Hall show and had a chance meeting with Benny Medina, who then set him up with Quincy Jones, who then made him audition on the spot with 10 minutes to prepare, which led to Will Smith getting the lead role on the new show called The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Every time I read this, I'm always impressed by the speed in which all this happened, since it was only 3 months in between the time Will Smith met Quincy Jones and the pilot was filmed. TV moved so much faster back then. For Smith, desperation had a lot to do with that. He needed that money badly, and I think that motivation is what drove him to overcome a lot of his acting shortcomings to become the lovable character on the show that we know today. It was either that or the love of the game, because for like the first 3 seasons, he barely got paid since the IRS garnished about 70% of his money, making him for all intents and purposes bankrupt for a large portion of the show. Good thing he didn't have to carry the show by himself, because Fresh Prince had an amazing cast. The original youngest of the cast was Tatiana M. Ali, who played Ashley Banks, and unlike a lot of child stars on sitcoms back then, she was an integral part of the storylines right from the very beginning. She was never just there for cute one-liners. Nah, they gave that duty to the eventual youngest sibling, Little Nicky, later on, played by Ross Bagley in later seasons. The next youngest Banks kid was Carlton Banks, played by Alfonso Ribeiro, who started out as a snooty, straightforward antagonist to Will, meant to represent black conservatives, but ultimately he would morph into a lovable but complicated character on the show, who became Will's biggest partner in crime. He's perhaps most known for his Carlton dance, which he came up with on his own, since the script just said Carlton dances. He credits the inspiration for the dance from 2 sources. One is the way Courtney Cox and Bruce Springsteen dances in the music video for Dancing in the Dark, and the second is Eddie Murphy describing how white people dance on his stand-up Delirious. I spent a good 15 minutes laughing at both inspirations. The oldest child was Hillary Banks, played by Karen Parsons, a character that was almost cut from the show before the pilot was even filmed. But because Parsons decided to add lazy hip mannerisms to the routine, they decided that they could do a little something with an entitled and stuck-up type character. I think what always made these shows so excellent was the people they got to play the parents. It was always so authentic, and I think it's because they always got veteran actors to play those roles. Philip Banks, the father, was played by James Avery, who other than being the voice of Shredder in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, had a long list of credits going all the way back to the 70s. When the question sometimes comes up, which 90s dad would you have preferred to have, Philip Banks is usually at the top of that list, and I think that's a testament to how well Avery played a fatherly role. His wife, Vivian Banks, was actually played by 2 actresses. And you know what? I'm gonna start with the second one first. On seasons 4 through 6, she was played by Daphne Maxwell Reid, and I think she frequently gets a bad rap and gets lumped in with the hate for the second Harriet Winslow on Family Matters. During my top 10 video, I said if you actually go back and watch the show, both Vivians are about a tie, and I stand by that. Sometimes I think it's just hard to let go of an original character, and Janet Hubert set such a high standard that Daphne Reid didn't stand a chance in the eyes of the fans. It didn't help that the show was set to be canceled after season 4, the season in which she debuted in, and it was only saved because of fan outcry. But the fact that it was going to be canceled at all in her first season makes it kind of seem like it was her fault, when it wasn't. Anyway, back to Janet Hubert, the first Vivian. I've always loved her portrayal as Aunt Viv, and I also love the dynamic she had when she was always the intermediary between Will, her nephew, and Philip, her husband. Unfortunately, Janet Hubert and Will Smith did not get along, something that was shrouded in a ton of rumors for years, with people coming up with all kinds of reasons why until both of them eventually spoke on it. Will Smith did a radio interview not long after her departure, where he called her bitter and ego-driven. And behind the scenes, this had a huge effect on Janet, since it labeled her as hard to work with. Secretly, Hubert was dealing with a lot behind the scenes, because they offered her a reduced contract, and also told her she couldn't take any outside roles to supplement her income. She had just given birth, and was supporting an abusive husband on top of that, so she declined that offer, and the network just replaced her. Thankfully, and a rarity with these type of stories, this has a happy ending, since Will Smith and Janet Hubert have since reconciled and talked out their issues on a table talk in 2020. It's crazy to me to think that had the fans not crashed out over the cancellation following season 4, we might never have gotten a lot of classic episodes, like Ashley's singing career, the Apache dance, Nia Long coming to the show, Carlton buying that gun. Seriously, go and look at episodes from season 5 and 6 and check out all the stuff we would have missed out on. Thank goodness they listened, because I personally think The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is one of those sitcoms that doesn't lose momentum and is good from beginning to end. And I'm glad it was able to not just get a final send-off, but also a reboot, which, while I'm much more of a fan of the original show over that one, it still shows the impact that The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air had on pop culture and its fans, and it's far from dead, even today.